If you own a shop, this is the only podcast that's going to tell you the truth.
Welcome to the operator's table. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the operator's table. I'm Mitch. We're here with Myron again, here to talk to you guys another week. Myron, what has been up with you in the last week?
Yeah, man. I have been spending a lot of time at one of my other brick and mortar stores that we just started getting going for one of my other businesses, which I'm still not naming. And so it's been a lot of renovation, a lot of work, a lot of time dedication into that to get things kind of figured out and planned out and how I want the layout to be and, how I want, certain things to look. So anyway, it's been a lot of work into that and it's been exhausting.
You're almost there, I think. You're, what, 2 months?
No, I'm probably about a month out from opening.
A month out from opening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent a little bit of time there wrapping some walls today. We got some more to do.
Yeah.
You got a lot going on there.
Plenty more to do, yes.
Yeah, I have had an issue with my tooth the last week. The whole thing. I'm not even going to get into it, but when I go get root canal and then all this other stuff, got to go back again. Not been fun. And then...
Yeah, you looked like you got punched in the face the other day.
Yeah, I was pretty swollen. Yeah, I know. And then the worst part out of that is I wanted to rest, so I sat on my back patio and just relaxed and fell asleep for like 45 minutes, and now I'm sunburned. Can you tell?
Yeah.
How red? Yeah, it's just from.
I just figured it was another lake weekend or something like that.
No, because I 2 days ago I didn't look like this, and it was a Monday.
Yeah, I gotcha.
I just was in my back patio, just like wanted to relax, and my mouth was hurting.
I'm not measuring your skin redness over day by day. So.
That's true. That's true. No, there has been a lot of lake weekends. Yeah, it's been busy. Anyway, all right. What did we talk about last week? Let's remind everyone.
Yeah. So the last episode that we talked about was actually more of a response to a couple other shops that were talking negatively about XPEL and the brand, and we were essentially just trying to, respond to those issues that they keep bringing up in these videos and trying to give a fuller picture on the side of XPEL. And so that's really what the last episode was about. It wasn't about trash talking anybody or trash talking other brands. That's not what we do. But, I did try to push a couple buttons there. So, hopefully we get a response out of them. That was the goal. So if you want to know or hear about what we had to say, watch that previous episode. If you guys are watching this podcast, you probably know what I'm talking about. There's 2 shops specifically that are trashing XPEL pretty consistently. So, yeah, watch that episode.
Yeah. And this week, we're going to do something a little different, something a little fun. This will kind of cover a couple of different topics. We're going to play a little game. I don't have a name to the game. We'll call it Good or Bad Idea. All right. So I got here a list of different scenarios and different questions I'm going to ask you. And you're going to respond with yes, it's a good idea, or no, it's a bad idea, and we'll kind of discuss it. It'll kind of give the viewers a little different perspective, just kind of covering different scenarios that can happen.
I think that's a bad idea.
That's a bad idea. All right, that was the first question. All right, we're off to a hot start. All right, here we go. First question. We're going to start here. It's going to be a scenario, okay? Your highest producing employee wants a 30% raise. You can afford it, but giving it to them means everyone else will eventually expect the same. Do you give it to them?
Yeah, see, that's where I think it's going to be one of the biggest issues is that, you get people who work in your company, and the longer they work there, they sometimes will start to feel more entitled. And so at some point, especially if they feel like they're your best person and they know that, and if you consistently reassure them how important they are to the business, then it almost kind of like reassures them in what they think. And like, man, I think, he talks about how important I am all the time. I think that probably means I should probably ask for a raise because he would hate to lose me, and I think that's something that happens a lot in a lot of businesses, not just shops like us, but businesses in any industry.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think this is something where it's like it's case by case scenario, right? I mean, if you have a customer or not customer, an employee who maybe you're really honestly underpaying a little bit, and somebody and they come ask you for 30% raise. Well, I mean, maybe that's okay then because you're already underpaying them. You raise them 30%,
I mean, keep in
and
mind,
it's fine.
30% is a pretty significant
Well,
raise.
I
We're not
mean,
talking a couple bucks an hour or flag hour
if you're
here.
paying them 20
30%.
bucks an hour, now you're paying them 26 bucks an hour.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
30% raise, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I mean, it's $6 an hour. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Um,
That's pretty significant.
it is significant. I just, like I said, if you're underpaying somebody already as it is, and you can do a 30% increase, then I would say probably just do it. If you they truly are a star player and they're doing great. Otherwise, you can't really let your employees put you in a chokehold like that.
Right.
And if you ever have an employee for one that makes it seem like they have something over you as the owner, like, oh, I am your best guy. If you
Right,
lose
right.
me, then you just need to get rid of that person. You probably should just fire that person right then and there and just make it happen because otherwise they're going to ask for a 30% raise now, and then you give it to them, and then in 6 more months they're going to ask for another raise because they know they have it over on top of you, and it's like at some point you're going to have to say no because you can't afford to keep doing that, and then they're just going to leave because you're not giving them what they want.
Yeah. Now, I think also, part of that question is also if um, will you give them the raise if you understand that eventually everyone else is going to ask for that same amount of money?
Well, yeah, that's definitely a big one too. Yes, because even though, like, you would think that most people keep their pay to themselves. That usually isn't the case. A lot of people talk about their pay within the workplace,
People do
and
talk,
you
yeah.
can't stop that from
Right,
happening.
right, right.
As a business, it's illegal for you to do that.
Yeah.
So you can't tell somebody not to talk about their pay, and so eventually it's going to get around, and then people are going to be like, "Well, I'm doing a fucking just as good of a job as he is. I should get paid that much money."
Well, so that right there is the important piece, right?
Yeah.
If you have two people who are producing the exact same way and have the exact same character, what you're looking for, I agree that if this person's getting paid X amount, and if we're apples to apples here in all these different areas, yeah, I can see why the employee would have a good point of the money that they want to make should match the other person. Now,
Yeah.
if someone else says, "Hey, this guy just got a 30% raise," if they're asking me that question, "Hey, can I get that same raise?" It depends on who it is. We're going to look at, and we're going to break it down.
Yes.
I would sit down with an employee and tell them, "Look, they make this money, and if the number is out, everyone knows what that employee's making.
Right.
Now we can discuss it. Otherwise, I'd never bring it up. But we're saying, hey, he produces this much each week. Here are the numbers, and we have a leaderboard to show that, right?
Yeah.
And I could dig even deeper into that if I need to. But I would say, look, this person produces X amount of hours a week. You produce this much.
Yeah.
This person is here on time every day. He only takes this many days off, whatever the case may be. I would also encourage that employee.
Well, I'll tell you right now, you're kind of feeding into what my next thing was going to be about.
Okay.
Which is essentially you have to look at all these things and see, like, that person who's asking you for a raise, are they on the same playing field as
Right.
everybody else in the shop?
Right.
Or are they truly
Yeah,
up here,
right.
above everybody else?
Yep.
And you have to compare a lot of that stuff. Like you said, their attendance. Are they actually there every day? How much are they actually outputting? How many mistakes are they having? How many
Right.
write-ups do they have? If you guys are doing performance reviews, which I do suggest that you do at least a couple times a year, and then you have that as record as well, and you can bring all of this up. So if somebody were to ask you for a raise, then you could be like, well, you've gotten 6 write-ups this year. I mean, until I see some improvement, I can't really help you out. You have something to fall back on. But if you truly have a star player who's a winner in all these categories, and maybe they have 1 or 2 write-ups, or maybe they have a missed day here or there, okay, maybe you can actually consider giving them that full raise, or
Right.
at least negotiating with them a little bit.
Yeah, I think the important piece here is if this situation does occur, and you're talking to an employee who doesn't deserve the amount of money that this other employee just got, I would encourage them and be like, hey, here's what you need to do. Like, let's set a goal for you, right?
Yeah,
Let's set a goal because I want you to make that much money.
yeah,
For you to make that much money, your goal has to be X amount of labor hours a week. You have to be, present and on time, whatever, 95% of the time in the next 3 months. Set set a goal for these employees.
Yep.
One, that makes the employee see that you give a shit about them.
Yes.
Two, you're testing this employee to see if they're truly worth this amount of money.
Yes.
And that helps everybody. So
yeah, you're testing them, and then you're also pushing them to.
You're
better,
encouraging
right?
them. Yes,
And if
you
they
want to
do
see
better,
them grow.
the business does better.
Exactly.
Right. Everybody grows,
Yeah.
and that's how you get respect as an owner, or you get respect as a manager. Is whenever you set these goals or these bars for these guys, and push them to hit them, because over time, as they do hit them, if they hit them, then they'll realize that they're growing and they're getting better and that they're making more money or whatever it is, and that's really going to create your culture at your shop as well.
They're going to
So
appreciate
you
the company.
have to,
They're going to appreciate the company they work for because they see that you're pushing them to get better and you want them to achieve their goal.
Which is something we always did on our performance reviews when we were doing them monthly, which
Yeah.
we haven't done them monthly in a long time. But we always set a goal like, okay, this is where you're at now. This is where we want you to be in 30 days, and then we're going to
Reevaluate,
check this,
yeah.
in 30 days and see how you've been. If there's been, no improvement, but they're wanting a raise, and we're like, well, you haven't really improved yet. So,
All right, here's my next one. All right, here's a scenario. An employee makes a $15,000 mistake. So maybe cutting through a carbon roof on a car could cost maybe that much or something crazy like that. It doesn't matter.
let's be realistic.
Okay.
Let's say,
Well, a $5,000 mistake?
let's do a $5,000 mistake
Yeah.
on by not putting a battery tender on a car that has a lithium battery. The battery
Sure.
dies. That's
There
a
you go.
$5,000
Yeah,
battery.
there's your mistake, right? They immediately admit it, they take responsibility, and propose a solution. Do you treat the mistake differently because they owned up to it?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So, one of our core values at White Glove Auto is accountability. That is one of the biggest things that I look for in any person that works in my shop is accountability. And it's okay. We're all humans. We all make mistakes. Shit happens. It happens all the time. I've made mistakes. All I want somebody to do is Myron or Mitch or whatever the manager is, I fucked up. I did this. I was doing this and this is how it happened. And, they explain everything. They don't give you excuses or BS. And if it's their first time making that mistake, then we're like, okay, well, it's a learning lesson. We do a write up, and we document everything we need to. And then as a company, we'll take care of it. But if a person ever tries to make excuses, or they truly were careless in what they were doing to cause that damage, or they tried to hide it from you in any way whatsoever, that is an immediate, either you fire that person, you suspend that person, or you make them pay for whatever damage there is. It just depends on the scenario and how badly they lied to you or how bad the situation is. But that is something that should not be tolerated in any business. Okay, because that's just not, as a manager or an owner, you don't need to always be consistently worrying if somebody's lying to you.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let me kind of add to this question now. Let's say that the scenario happened, like I said, they owned up to it. A month later, that same employee makes the same mistake. How do you approach it? Because that's a little...
So that time, it's more like, you pull them back into the office. You're like, this is the second time now. You've now cost us $10,000. This is a mistake where when we talked about it the first time, we said that you would have to pay for the mistake the second time around. Okay, you should have learned your lesson the first time. And this is a costly mistake. This is huge. This is essentially, paying almost a full employee salary for a month. $5,000.
Yeah.
And this has to stop. Period. So you're going to pay us back as a company for that mistake. And if it happens again, you're going to have to lose your job.
And you obviously hope that this employee takes this in a positive way.
Yeah, right. I mean, you have to step up the seriousness every time it happens.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just let somebody keep making mistakes and them getting away with it because it's going to always continue. You always have to have a carrot and a stick, which is like a reward and a punishment. And so that's something you always have to have. And if you don't have that, then that kind of just lets people do what they want to do because there's no like system rewarding them or punishing them for doing good or bad.
Yeah. All right. Next question. That was a good answer, by the way. Um, third question. An employee tells you privately that one of your managers is making poor decisions. But you trust your manager. Do you investigate anyway?
We always investigate claims like that. The moment that an employee ever brings up any sort of issue with the manager whatsoever, we always investigate to get the full story and see what actually happened. Because a lot of times, well, I say a lot of times, it's like 99% of the time, there's always a story from the employee, and there's a story from the manager, and then there's a story that actually happened.
Right.
Right? The truth is always in the middle somewhere. And, you can't just blindly trust your management, and you can't just blindly trust your employees. You have to search for that truth yourself. And the moment that you put all of your trust into one person or the other is the moment everybody starts thinking you have favorites. You're not ever going to take anything seriously. You're not ever going to fix any problems and create solutions. And that's something you do not want in your business. That will ruin your culture so fast. It'll create a toxic environment, and you don't want that. So you should always take any sort of complaint against your management seriously and investigate it and see what's going on.
Here's the reality of it too. Your employee, I feel like it goes either one of two ways. One, the employee doesn't truly understand the intentions behind the manager, and that they find that the manager's, he's treating us like assholes, or he's doing this, or he's doing that. Maybe they don't understand what the manager's trying to do. Maybe the employee just needs some explaining so they can have a better understanding of the situation. Or the employee could truly be seeing something that ownership is not seeing.
Yes.
And looking into it may actually give you some light and be like, oh my God, this manager is doing these things. I trust him. But that's how it works, right? You always trust someone until they break your trust, especially if they've earned it over a period of time.
Exactly, because the thing is that whenever you have an employee, whether it's a manager or an employee, and they've been doing great in your eyes for last 3, 4, 5 years, however long they've been there, right? They think that they've earned your trust. And so now that allows them the ability to want to try and hide these little things here and there. And these little things start to increase over time. And then eventually somebody says something about it or catches them doing something wrong or whatever it is. And then you investigate. And then now it's a rabbit hole because now you investigate and sometimes you'll find something else. And then that leads to something else. And then that leads to something else. And then you find out you have to fire somebody. And so you have to always investigate that. And I think a lot of owners out there are probably scared to investigate
exactly what I was going to say.
Because they don't want to have to do that.
Yep.
It is, it could be pretty painful for any shop out there to lose a manager or to lose a good employee or who you thought was a good employee, and now you lose them all of a sudden. But you can't keep people like that around. That's not how you keep a good environment. You're going to lose more people. You're going to lose more money. You're going to lose way more by keeping that person there than you would just getting rid of that person.
Yep. I agree. All right. I got a good one here for you. So, you have an employee who could become an incredible leader, but promoting them would remove them from the position where they're currently making you the most money. Do you promote them?
Yes.
And why? I knew your answer was going to be yes, by the way. But why?
Well,
I also know, but I want to hear more in depth.
This is something, okay, I'm going to go back a little bit here because this is exactly why I started White Glove Auto in the first place. Is because I worked for a dealership. I was a service technician. I worked on cars for several years. And I learned that doing this was quickly killing my hobby that I always loved working on my own cars. Now I do it for a living. Now it's the last thing I want to do, and I no longer enjoy working on my own cars. So I wanted to become a service writer, which is a higher paying position. It's a more professional position. You're customer facing at that point. And I wanted to do that. But I produced really well in the shop. I always met my quota and surpassed it every single time. And so when I brought up to my management that I wanted to move to being a service writer, they didn't like that. And it's not like they came across that way. They were just like, oh, yeah, sure, go ahead and take these tests. Once you take all these service writer tests and you pass them all, then on the next time we have an opening, we'll look at you as a candidate and, we'll move from
Yeah,
there.
they feed you what you want to hear.
Yeah. And then the next time came around and they skipped right over me, didn't even talk to me.
Yeah.
Pissed me off. I went through the whole spiel again. Did this 4 times. On the 4th time is where I was just like, I was so fucking mad. Like,
Yeah.
I was like red in my face. I immediately went to the manager. I was like, I'm done. I'm putting my 2 weeks in. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And then I had 2 weeks from that point to start White Lovato, essentially. And that's how White Lovato started.
Crazy.
And so what I'm saying is that you have a good employee, and just because they're producing really well in one area doesn't mean that you shouldn't, promote them or put them somewhere else, because that's a good person that you don't want to lose.
Right.
So you really have to strategize and figure out how can you make that relationship work and not lose that person. Not only that, you want that person to grow. You don't want that person to feel stuck in that one spot. You get a person who feels stuck, like they're never going to leave that spot and they're going to do that for the rest of their life, they will instantly probably just want to leave. Unless, some people are okay with having the same job for fucking 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't. They
Yeah.
want to have some sort of growth and move around and, earn that. And somebody who's a really good employee to you, who's killing it in a certain area, you should really, really consider moving them up into a higher position or wherever else they're wanting to move, so that you don't lose that person. Again, you're going to lose a lot more by not doing that, because then you are going to lose that really good person. And he could have been better in that other area. You never know.
You know that we have a very similar situation in our shop with Nick, right? He's the shop manager now.
Yeah.
Pulling Nick out of the shop on a regular basis to promote him to the manager of the shop is a loss in that position that he had in the shop. He produced very well, very high quality. He was very efficient.
He always produced, let me tell you guys, if somebody works 80 hours in the shop, that's a 2-week period, 80 hours. Nick was consistently pushing out like 90 to 100 hours. So he was way over his time that he worked there. He was really producing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, moving him into a management position means losing that efficiency in our shop and replacing him with somebody who has less efficiency.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can't hold him back.
No.
You can't hold him back. The guy, deservingly so, is in this position that he is in now. We were all ecstatic for him when he, I personally, when we spoke about, okay, now's the time to pull the trigger on it, I was excited to have that conversation with Nick and get him, trained up in that position. He deserves it. He works his ass off. For years, he worked his ass off in the shop. So I don't think anyone, any managers or owners should ever hold anyone back. That's like the shittiest thing to do.
Yeah.
Because unless you have a conversation with this employee and they directly tell you, hey, I appreciate the offer or the opportunity, but I'd rather stick in the shop. That's where I like to be. Perfectly fine. But you had a discussion with this person.
Yes.
Right? You had a discussion. You know where their head's at, and now you can, if that makes you happy, great. You're not a nice person, but hey, if it makes them happy, great. You move on, and it is what it is. But I definitely think you should never hold anyone back, whether it's sales or shop or whatever it may be. You
just should have, even if maybe at that point you can't move that person to another position, you need to have that conversation with them and be realistic with them and be like, hey, listen, I can't do this right now, but I will be able to do this, and you better stick to your word.
Yeah.
Like, if that person stays on the track that they've been on, and that time comes along, and then all of a sudden you find somebody else who might also be a good candidate, you better stick to your word on the other guy, because if you hire the other person, then you just lost the other guy.
Well, that too, but also, the fear is you take someone out of a sales position that makes you money or a shop position that makes you money, and you feel like, okay, this person is no longer going to make that same money. Like, being in management or whatever position they move up to matters a lot too with how the business flows. It doesn't directly bring in money, that position, but it controls how efficient everyone else is at making money.
Yes.
It's a very important position. So, if you have someone who has that leadership quality or understanding of how to manage or whatever it may be, that is just as important of a role. And a company with bad management should be the first people to know.
Yes.
Right? If you have a poorly ran shop, it's a huge difference from having like a solid manager who knows how to distribute work and talk to employees and motivate employees, um, and get on employees to be better. Like that, that's equally as important.
Yeah.
Um,
And
that's
these,
how you hire more guys in the shop
yes.
who are just as efficient as this guy
Yeah.
was, because he knows what to look for.
And these A players that want to move up and they want to grow and they're asking you to move up, they're not stupid either, right? They know when a position is not available. So it's like even if an A player in your shop or wherever asks you for promotion or whatever, you just still have that conversation with them. Let them know, hey, it's not available right now. They're not stupid. They know that, but they probably want you to know so that they're next in line
Absolutely.
if that position opens up. And you need to have that conversation with them to let them know that, hey, yeah, obviously it can't happen right now, but you are a top candidate for me, and when this happens, you are guaranteed to have that conversation with me to take that position. So,
Absolutely.
you know,
All right. Your best salesperson refuses to follow a company process because their results are significantly better than everyone else's. Do you force them to follow it?
say it one more time.
Your best salesperson refuses to follow a company process because their results are significantly better than everyone else's. Do you force them to follow your process?
You said sales employee.
Yeah, so your best salesman. So your best salesman is doing his own thing, not following your procedures, how we train our sales guys, but they're producing way better than every other sales guy.
Here's the deal: is that if you have an employee who is performing better than the procedures you have set in place, you might want to see what they're doing and just see if you need to update anything on your end. Don't let them necessarily know that, because I like it whenever a business does learn something from their employees, but I don't want a business owner to sit there and ask an employee for advice on how to change things. You have to look at it yourself, come up with a conclusion yourself on what they're doing, and then make the change yourself. Don't go to that employee who's doing better and be like, hey, what do you recommend we change to make this better over here? Because then you're going to get a bunch of unsolicited advice that you don't want, and then you're going to create a weird, awkward relationship, and you might piss them off or whatever else.
Or they're going to feel entitled now that they're going to make the decisions around here because
Yes.
they're implementing something that you mentioned potentially.
Yes. Your processes should always be like a baseline. You want to have a good baseline so that you have standards, you have goals that you need to achieve, and your processes should be built to get those people to hit your goals. And if you have somebody who's outperforming that, then that person is just outperforming it. That's it. Um, you know, and then if you get multiple people who's outperforming that standard or that process or whatever, and your bar starts getting raised, then you need to really look at raising your bar as well, so that every person that you bring in now, that's the new standard.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's a pretty decent response right there. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. All right, here we go. Your manager wants to raise prices by 15% or suggests it. You believe you'll lose customers, but your manager believes the remaining customers will be more profitable. Who wins?
See, that's another fine line right there, because
Because the manager point of it? Because it's coming from the manager, is it what you're saying?
no, it's I'm trying to understand why the manager would even suggest that in the first
Well,
place.
I don't think that's kind of the whole, that was just the way it was worded. Let's say you have an option to raise your prices 15%, but in turn, let me read that again, sorry. Where is it at? You're thinking about raising your prices 15%. You believe you'll lose customers that way, but the other side of you believes that the remaining customers will be more profitable. What is the best decision there?
So,
Essentially,
I mean, for
more.
me in my position, this is what I can say: is that if you're at a spot where you could even potentially raise your prices 15%. That's a pretty significant jump. You're underpricing yourself every day, but it's just I've done a lot of research throughout the years on my pricing and how we do things, and we get a lot of market data, and we do a lot of mystery shops to our local competition, and we figure out what pricing is at, and then we figure out what do we do that's different from them, how are we better, what's our benefits versus their benefits, you know what I mean, and then we figure out kind of where our prices should lie. But not only that, you have to know what your costs are. And so with all of that combined, you kind of get your consensus on what prices should be for everything. And, raising, like for us, raising 15% on our prices, we would lose so much business.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't gain from it. We would still have people buy from us, but we would lose more than we would gain at that point.
What if that percentage becomes smaller to make the decision harder? Let's say a 5% price difference in our hourly rate. Would you rather take less customers but larger margins, or would you rather stick to a larger customer base?
I think this is another one, even at that lower amount, because you have inflation every year. Everything becomes more expensive.
Right.
Every year by an average of 3 to 4%. If you're raising your prices 5%, you're staying ahead of inflation plus adding a little bit more. So, I would suggest doing that.
What if it was 5% on top of inflation?
So then you're about 10% essentially.
Yeah, let's say that. Let's say you're staying ahead of the curve, but by 5%.
I mean,
is it worth?
In our scenario, no, it's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, I think we're competitive with where we're at, and we're at the top end of our market for where we're at, and we know that based on a bunch of research. For other shops, I can't really say the same. Like I can tell you that all of our competitors in town could raise their prices 10% and still be cheaper than us in some cases.
So if you were all our competitors in town, if you're in the middle of the pack or on the lower end of anyone's market, would you consider raising the prices?
That's where the market research comes in. You have to mystery shop, and you have to get a consensus on what all these other shops are charging for the comparable products. Ceramic tint for ceramic tint. Something that's comparable to XPEL, like Steck or 3M or, whatever. And see what their prices are. And you really have to understand, where you need to be based on them. But if you're at the bottom of that totem pole, if everybody else is pricing higher than you are and you're at the bottom, raise your prices up.
Well, you're not hurting anything.
No.
If you still remain the cheapest, if your plan is to still be the cheapest, but you can raise your prices, isn't it a no-brainer?
If you're yes, right. Well, I mean, also being the cheapest is not good. You're going to get all the crappiest customers. You're going to get all the troublemakers, all the people that will not only see your cheapest price, but then want to ask probably for more discounts on top of that. And then you're really making slim margins or nothing at all. And you're causing way more headache for yourself. I get that new businesses out there, they have to charge super low prices to kind of get like a name for themselves.
To get in the door, yeah.
To get some credibility going.
Right.
But after a year, you got to start raising those prices up. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that because they're like, oh, man, I already built a good customer base on these prices. Now, if I raise prices, I'm going to piss everybody off and I'm going to lose customers.
You may lose customers, but you're going to gain better quality customers.
Yes, 100%.
All right. That's a good answer. All right. Next question here. Your company can grow 50% next year, but you're going to lose some control over the culture of the company. Would you take the growth? That's the scenario. I know if we grew 50% next year, we're going to be able to keep our culture the way it is because we've been through these stages of growth.
Yes.
But a company that hasn't, put yourself in their shoes, what are you doing? Would you take the growth to lose some culture, but you're growing 50%?
That's a tough question because if you have a good culture, your employees genuinely love being at your shop and working every day, and they have a positive attitude, and you don't have a toxic environment, that culture is valuable, very valuable, because when you bring more people in, that's going to set the bar for those people. And if those new people that come in aren't at that bar, they stand out so much more, and it allows you to eliminate that person from your team faster and prevents them from creating any sort of, negative environment. And so people have to understand that the culture of your business is probably one of the most valuable aspects. Now, I'm not saying turn down the growth, but you really, 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 really have to focus on your culture as you grow. You cannot let that slip. That is one of the most important, crucial things. If you have to stay up an extra, 6 hours at night and you get little sleep trying to figure out how to build processes and learn how to keep your culture in check, then that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
So I say take the growth as long as you're willing to put in the extra work to keep your culture in check.
How would you keep your culture in check, from your opinion? If you're talking to a business owner right now that is scared to grow because he doesn't want a culture change, because he's comfortable where he's at, he trusts his guys, what's like give me like a quick response with like, how would you, in a nutshell, how would you keep the culture the way it is, or what would you do to keep the culture consistent with growth?
Well, let's see. If your culture is already in a great spot, then you need to build. This is business 101. This is the foundation of your business. Processes, procedures, checklists. You do that to ensure that you're keeping the culture that you want. And you have to build in disciplinary actions, your management. You have to make sure that people know what your goals are as a business. Your management knows what those goals are. They push those same goals. You got to make sure that you are communicative as an owner on letting everybody know where you want to go as a business. So doing all of these things and having organization within your business and having transparency to your employees to a certain level, I think is how you're going to maintain that culture. The moment that you're like trying to hide stuff from employees, or you don't have an organization and things are kind of like all over the place, and you have, say you have 3 people in the same position and they're all 3 doing different things, you're kind of like, what the heck, and nobody has respect for anything. That's how you create bad culture. So having organization is definitely going to help keep your culture, and having transparency and setting those goals for your team, letting them know where you want to go as a company.
How much of that response that you just gave has to do with sales always comes first? You get the sales, then you figure it out after. How much of it?
Sales always comes first.
Right. So how much of that? With that being said, how much of that affected your decision to take the growth? Because sales always comes first, right? Growth by 50% means sales.
Of course, I always pushed for more growth. Now, could we have pushed harder for growth at certain times? Yes. And there's times where I've backed off a little bit, whether that's from my marketing or not going out to many car shows or connecting with as many people, because it's like if we're having like a tough growth pain at that point in time, we need to get some stuff figured out and still grow, but don't try to like push it out and grow as fast as possible within that growth spurt. You got to kind of slow down a little bit, figure stuff out,
well, it's kind of
then floor it again.
That's kind of where the culture you can lose your culture too if you're kind of letting things get out of hand because there's too much to handle, right?
Yes.
So, okay. All right, here's another one. Your best employee gets another job offer for 40% more pay, or whatever that percentage is. It's a high number. You can match it, but doing so would create a pay imbalance across the team. Would you match it?
So this is something that's kind of like your first question that you asked.
Similar, yes.
But in this scenario, what you bring up is that it's competition. So you have to look at what the competitor offers. The competitor is offering 40% more pay, but is their shop as organized? Is there as many?
But maybe the employee doesn't care about that though.
If they don't, then
they're seeing the dollar signs pop up.
If they don't, out the door. So, yeah, but I'm just saying that you have to really compare yourself, because if you are less than that shop, if you offer less things and that shop is truly bigger than you, and this person's a good employee, then you probably need to try to work something out with that employee and pay him more if you can, or some sort of negotiation to not lose that person to somebody who's better than you are or bigger than you are at that time. Um, but yeah, some people just don't care. But we've also, like in our scenario, right, where we've had people leave and then they regret it,
Yes.
right? They've literally come back to our shop wanting to have a job back, saying they've regretted their decision.
Yeah, the grass is not always greener, and people have learned that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, what if the pay imbalance is so severe where it's like, man, I'm keeping this person because they're good. I want to keep them. I want to pay them this money, but we're talking let's
At
say
some
a 40% difference to the next guy in the
At
shop.
some point, it's unrealistic, right? Whenever we were 4 to 5 years in our business, we were paying people on average probably $17 to $18 an hour. That's whenever you started coming in and you were wanting $25 an hour, and I was like, I can't do that. I turned you down a couple times before we finally hired you.
Yeah.
And so there is a line. There is a limit there for businesses where they just can't pay that much.
But what if you could afford it?
If you can afford it,
If you could afford
if you can afford it, doesn't mean it's an automatic yes.
Okay.
You can't just keep raising people's pay. You run into that same scenario we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
where now everybody else is going to expect that same thing.
Yeah.
You have to have some sort of line there. And I think what's really important is that whenever you hire somebody into whatever position, you need to let them know what that cap is, so that they know that once they hit that cap, that's the cap. There is no more than that. And so
will
it's
that
like,
discourage employees?
no, there's caps everywhere. Every job, like corporate
Sure,
store,
sure.
whatever, they
Yeah.
have caps on how much that position will make.
Yeah. Oh, that position. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not. Excuse
So-
me. It's not that they can't grow into a different position.
Yeah, so if somebody's capped, which at our shop is $32.50 an hour, if somebody's capped at $32.50 and they want a $10 raise, it's like, I can't really do that, because if everybody were to be on the same playing field as you, and now I'm paying everybody $42.50,
Right.
I would go broke.
Right.
And so you have to find that line there.
Okay. Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to lose somebody, and it's okay. It's business. It's what happens.
All right. So I had one more question pulled up here, and I lost it.
That's
But-
all right. We have nothing but time over here.
That's right. All right. Hold on. I'm getting there right now. Okay. And here it is. Okay. An employee's performance has dropped because of their problems outside of work. They're normally excellent. How much should the business accommodate them? So in the sense where, let's say in this example, you know that this is going to happen for a short stretch, a month. Let's say a month. They're dealing with something. How much do you accommodate them? Otherwise, they're excellent.
I think this comes down to several different factors. You want to always make sure that you treat your entire team equally.
Right.
But you have some sort of leniency for some people who truly are A players and busting their ass, and they're your top producers, and maybe you give a little bit more slack for those guys. But you can't give them the world. Everybody has things going on. A family member dies, a pet dies, a medical emergency happens, whatever it is, right? Things happen in everybody's lives,
Yep.
and everybody handles it differently. I know somebody who was having a baby, and they wanted to take 2 weeks off. But then I also know somebody who was having a baby, and they were back at work the same day they had a baby.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you got to understand, you got to kind of have like that fine line there of like what's acceptable and what's not. I think that the person who came back to work the same day they had a baby should have took some days off.
Yeah.
But somebody who needs 2 weeks off is like, that's too much.
Yeah.
You got to kind of find the middle ground in what's acceptable. And you have to draw that hard line. Like, this is what I'm going to do for you. As long as they're being transparent with you too. Like, hey, I have this going on. I'm just asking if you can be a little bit lenient with me, I really apologize. Once this is done, I'm back to normal. And that is what it is. But you have to set expectations up front and let them know what's okay and what's not okay. And if they continue to take advantage of that, even after this time period or whatever it is, it's just time to let that person go, because that is something. Sometimes what happens. Sometimes there's people that have medical problems that now hinders their performance at the job, and maybe it's ongoing. Maybe they hope that it's only a month long, but turns out now it's going to be a year long thing or 2 year thing. You can't hold out for that one person. If you do that for them, everybody else is going to expect that same thing, and your shop can't run on that. And unfortunately, that has to lead to tough decisions, and you have to let that person go, because that's not going to fly. That's not going to keep your business running. And there's a lot of people out there that probably would hate my answer on that, but you're risking so much more. You get rid of one person, and you're saving the culture for everybody else that works there. You are protecting their paychecks. You're protecting the business that is providing money to these other families. And you can't let somebody drag your business down because of their personal issues. It sucks. It's something that you don't want to do as an owner, to make calls like this. But at some point in time, that if issues keep happening, like if you're having issues with your baby mama and you're constantly on the phone arguing, and you are missing work, or they're coming up there and they're fighting on their break time or whatever, and it's happening consistently, you just gotta fire that person. You can't deal with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've dealt with some of these situations at our shop as well, right? Where you have people have personal issues, and it's tough to I say it's tough. It sucks to have to be like, hey, cut that shit out because you're at work. People do have personal lives. It does affect them. It's just finding ways, right, to explain to them that work is work and personal life is personal life.
Not everybody has
They
that.
have to be able to draw that line. The management team, whoever talks to this employee, has to be able to draw that line and explain to the employee that they have to be able to draw that line.
Yes.
Because to an employee, it's all happening all at once, whatever the personal issue may be. I think it's very important for a management team to understand that you can't just give in because you feel bad for them, or it's not the right thing to do, or they don't feel like it's the right thing to do. You have to look past that. It sucks, but that's what you have to do because you have a business to run.
Yeah.
And you got to make money, and you can't just sit around
and you can't let things fall apart. You
Exactly.
cannot let things fall apart.
I think the biggest thing, right, with the falling apart is if you allow one person to do it and someone notices, the next time it's going to get a little bit worse. And at some point, where do you draw the line now? You've already allowed it to get to this point.
Yes.
And that's where your foundation breaks, your culture breaks, and everything goes downhill. Then you got bigger issues.
You have to hold the line. It's okay to give a little bit of slack or a little bit of leniency to somebody, especially somebody who's a good person in your shop. But if you have somebody who's a troublemaker, or somebody who's always causing issues as it is, and then something happens like this, then you can tighten the reins even more and be like, listen, dude, that doesn't matter. Everybody has issues going on. Either you're here to do your work or you're not. It's one or the other. But I think, again, it's a case-by-case scenario on who it is in your shop, how they're currently doing, how they've been doing, and adjusting to them. But you have to make sure you draw that line and set those expectations up front.
Yep. All right. I got one final one here. It's a pretty quick one. You can give a quick description of your answer. Your best employee deserves to make more money than the manager. True or false?
Yes.
Why?
It's always good. Again, good culture, good morale. When an employee knows that they have the potential to make more than a manager, because then they're also not somebody who's chasing the manager position because they want the money. Knows that they don't have to have the manager position to get the money. They could actually get more money if they just do a badass job in their current position. And they're motivated to do that. I'm not saying you pay somebody a salary or hourly more than that. You have to make it earnable in commissions. They have to work for it to make it happen. But you give them that ability to earn more than a manager, so that there isn't any sort of I don't know, any sort of animosity that gets built up over time because they're not moving positions, or you have a manager that is going to be there long term and they want to be a manager, but they can't be a manager because you already have a manager. And so it kind of like, if it's about money, that usually solves that problem. And usually, most of the time, it's about the money. It's not somebody
Right,
like,
the
oh, I
title.
want more responsibility. I want
Right.
more stress in my life.
Sure.
They want more money.
Yeah.
That's usually what it is.
No, I agree. That's a really good point you made, right? You allow them to understand that maybe if this manager doesn't move for a long time, you can still make as much, if not more money.
Yes.
How do you explain that to your manager?
Well, with the manager,
That's
it's
tougher,
like,
isn't it?
do you? No, I don't think it is, because to the manager, and I think that, I don't know, you can give me your input on this and what you think, but it's like, I think to a manager, you want to make your manager's life as easy as possible.
Right.
And if you have good paid employees who know they can make more than a manager, then you got usually somebody that is going to be motivated to do a great job, and that's going to be less maintenance for the manager to have to take care of.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what plays into it. And I think that's going to be a win for the manager every time, just because it makes their job easier. So it's like, in a way, a manager is somebody you trust really, really well in
I
that
hope so.
position, right? But they're not really working as hard as the employee. So I guess that's kind of a benefit to the manager. Like, they're not working as hard, they're making a little bit less money, but this person has to bust their ass to make more money than you do. But the ability is there, they can do it.
Yeah, my opinion on that is it depends on the manager. I think you have to split up shop and sales.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. Your sales manager, or I'm sorry, your sales employees, the guys actually selling the work. Those guys should have no ceiling as far as how much money they make,
Yes.
because they want to sell $2 million on their own a year. Great, you're going to get paid for it, right? I think that talk with the sales manager is easier to understand, because this guy's bringing in X amount of money.
Yes.
You're still managing what you're managing, regardless of how much money they bring in. And it makes your life easier when one of your sales guys making whatever crazy sales. For shop team, I guess I'll take that back. It depends on how your manager is set up. Like our shop manager Nick, he has so much going on because he deals with 9 employees in the shop. Plus, he also inserts himself into the shop to help. So he is putting in manual labor as well. He's scheduling work. He's quoting work. There is a lot on his plate. So that may be a little bit different than the sales manager, because the sales manager, at least in our shop, has a set of duties that he does. He runs through, numbers every day, and daily numbers and weekly numbers and different reports that we do. He helps the sales guys with questions they may have. But I think do you agree that it depends on the size or the amount of employees that you're managing? So someone with 2 or 3 employees is going to have less work to do typically than someone with 10 or 15 employees.
Yes, yeah, which is also kind of what I was saying earlier, is that, like Nick, he has quite a bit on his plate, right?
Yeah.
The shop manager. And so you attract good people,
Mm-hmm.
A players, B plus players, whatever you want to call them, with that pay.
Right.
And if you have those people in your shop that just don't cause issues and they just work and they get shit done,
Yeah.
that's something less that the manager has to take care of, right?
Yeah, if you have a shop of all A players.
So yes, even though you have 9 people,
Yeah.
if you have a great culture and you pay great and you've assembled an amazing team, then that's really not an issue for even the shop manager with that many employees. Now, is it always a perfect world? No.
Yeah, of course not.
You usually always have at least a couple weirdos in your shop or whatever it is.
People that you have to constantly address and micromanage.
Yes.
Yeah.
And but that's where it's like, when do you have to cut them off, essentially? Cut them from the team because they're causing too much trouble.
Yeah.
for everything,
Yep.
everybody.
Yep.
Right.
No, yeah. I mean, again, right. We have kind of like, I wouldn't say we have like totally different perspectives on that, but there's different scenarios. I think every shop is probably a little bit different. I think it just depends on the manager and what his duties are. If his duties are also to be in the shop and do shop work while also maintaining his own duties, you probably pay that manager more. I'm not saying you don't make it impossible for your shop guys to make as much money.
Yeah.
But like you said, they got to really work for it. Where you're starting your manager probably at a higher bar, in a way easier. They get paid. They get the money easier.
So like in our manager position, if you look at Jay, our sales manager, you look at Nick, our shop manager, and if they are just getting base pay every 2 weeks, and then you look at the guys in the shop who are getting just 80 hours a week,
right?
The managers make more every time.
If you're looking at just 80 hours.
Yes, if you're looking at base pay, managers are always making more money.
Right.
But like I said, the people who are getting commission, who can out earn the managers, they are now pushing beyond that baseline.
Correct.
And growing the company. And that's what you want. You want, because those are the people that are selling you money, selling you work, and doing the work out of your shop and putting it out.
I agree.
And those are the positions that are going to grow your business. And if you want more positions, if you want more availability for growth within the business, you have to grow. And so these people need to be like driving the business. And you do that by motivating them with more money, which is commission. I mean, that's essentially what you do.
No, you're right.
You only allow that to happen if they push hard and go above and beyond. If they're just doing normal average Joe stuff, then they'll never make more than a manager. They have to always outperform.
I agree. Sweet. All
right, guys. So that was actually a pretty fun episode, I think. That was actually something Mitch had that he wanted to do, and
just change it up a little bit.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. If you guys liked that format and you want us to do it again, let us know. Reach out to us on any of the social media platforms. Email us. Share this video with at least one person where it could potentially help them in their business, an owner, a manager, whoever it is. And we really appreciate it. A like and a share on our podcast, man. We're still trying to grow. We don't have many followers yet. We're trying to get out there. We would appreciate if you guys did that for us. But for now, it's another show in the books.
Absolutely, guys. Once again, we appreciate you guys watching and hanging out with us for another hour. We will see you next week. We hope you enjoyed. And remember, if it's not working, it's probably you. See you next week.